In a quiet village, there lived a blacksmith feared by everyone, not because of his strength, but because of his anger. A single mistake, a dropped tool, even a simple word from a stranger, and Bobby would explode like a raging fire. People avoided his workshop. Even his own wife feared that one day his anger would destroy everything he loved. So one morning, he climbed a mountain to seek the wisdom of a mysterious master. But instead of giving advice, the old sage simply shook a bowl of water. Then he said something that would change Bobby's life forever. When your mind is like this water, you can no longer see the truth. And what Bobby learned next turned the most dangerous man in the village into the calmest one. Welcome to Wise Soul Tales, where we explore the deepest corners of the human heart through stories of wisdom and change. In a quaint European village, cobblestone streets wind through colorful houses, and the air is filled with the scent of pine. Here lived Bobby, a blacksmith whose hammer struck iron with incredible skill, creating tools that were admired by everyone in town. However, Bobby possessed a temper as hot as his forge, often exploding over the smallest trifles that life threw at him. A dropped tool or a stubborn horse would turn his face red, sending sparks of rage flying in every single direction. His outbursts terrified the villagers, making them walk on eggshells whenever they passed by his workshop during the bright daylight hours. Elena, his gentle and loving wife, watched with a heavy heart, knowing that this fire was slowly consuming his very soul. One evening, she touched his arm gently and spoke of a wise man named Ahmad, who lived high above the clouds. Bobby scoffed at first, believing he needed no help, but the sadness in Elena's eyes eventually softened his hard, stubborn heart. He agreed to make the journey, packing a small bag and setting out before the sun had fully risen over hills. The path was steep and rugged, winding through dense forests where the mist clung to the ancient trees like silent ghosts. Every step was a battle against gravity, his heavy breathing matching the rhythm of his anxious and turbulent thoughts inside him. Finally, he reached the summit, where a modest hut stood surrounded by a garden of stones and perfectly raked white sand. Ahmad sat there in deep meditation, his presence radiating a calmness that made Bobby feel suddenly awkward and out of place. Bobby approached and explained his plight, his voice trembling slightly as he admitted that his anger was destroying his life's happiness. Ahmad did not speak, but pointed to a bowl of water sitting on a table, filled with clear and still liquid. The master suddenly shook the table violently, causing the water to splash and ripple, distorting the reflection of the blue sky. Ahmad looked at Bobby and said, "Observe how the water behaves when it is disturbed by forces from the outside world. When your mind is shaken by anger, you cannot see the truth, just as this water cannot reflect the world clearly." They waited in silence as the ripples slowly faded, the water returning to a state of perfect and glass-like stillness. Only when the water is calm can it reflect the sky again. Only when you are calm can you see clearly. Bobby stared into the bowl, realizing how often his judgment had been clouded by the violent storms of his own temper. Ahmad then led him to a fire where a pot of water was boiling furiously, steam rising into the cool air. "Place your hand near the steam," Ahmad instructed, and Bobby felt the intense heat that threatened to burn his skin immediately. Anger is like this boiling water. It hurts those who get too close and eventually evaporates all your inner peace away. Ahmad removed the wood from beneath the pot, and slowly the bubbling ceased, leaving the water warm but no longer dangerous. "You must learn to remove the fuel of your anger," Ahmad said, instead of constantly feeding the fire with your reaction. The next day, Ahmad took Bobby to a muddy path and asked him to stand still while holding a clean cloth. Ahmad picked up a handful of mud and pretended to throw it directly at Bobby, who flinched and stepped aside quickly. "Why did you move?" asked Ahmad. Bobby replied, "Simply because I did not want to get dirty from the flying mud." "Exactly," said Ahmad. "When someone throws insults at you, it is just mud. You do not have to catch it. You have the choice to step aside and let the insult pass you by, leaving your spirit clean and completely untouched. If you get angry, you are catching the mud with your own hands and smearing it all over your own shirt." Bobby closed his eyes, visualizing all the times he had caught the mud of others and let it ruin his day. He spent the next few days practicing meditation, learning to breathe through the discomfort instead of reacting with immediate, blind rage. Slowly, the lines of tension on his face began to smooth out, replaced by a serenity he had never known before. It was time to return. Bobby bowed deeply to Ahmad, gratitude shining in his eyes, ready to face the world again. The walk down the mountain felt lighter, the birdsong sounding sweeter, as if the world itself had changed along with him. When he arrived back in the village, the familiar sounds of the bustling market greeted him, testing his newfound inner peace. A group of local troublemakers saw him approaching and decided to test if the hot-headed blacksmith had truly changed his ways. One of them shouted a rude comment about his work, laughing loudly while waiting for the inevitable explosion of Bobby's temper. In the past, Bobby would have thrown his bag down and engaged in a shouting match that lasted for many hours. But today, Bobby stopped. He took a deep breath, remembering the still water and the mud that he need not catch. He looked at the man with a calm smile, nodded slightly, and continued walking without saying a single word of anger. The troublemakers were stunned into silence, their laughter dying out as they realized their words had no power over him anymore. Bobby realized that by not reacting, he kept his power. The instigators were left holding the mud they tried to throw. Elena ran out to meet him, seeing the change immediately in his relaxed posture and the gentle light in his eyes. She hugged him tightly, knowing that the man she loved had finally found the peace he had been searching for forever. Bobby returned to his forge, but the rhythm of his hammer was different now. It was steady, controlled, and full of purpose. The villagers noticed the change. The fear in the workshop vanished, replaced by a respect for his craftsmanship and his calmness. Bobby began to share what he had learned, telling the children that strength is not in shouting, but in staying calm. One evening, he walked to the edge of the sea, watching the waves crash against the shore under the setting sun. He thought about the wind. We cannot control the wind or the storms that life sends our way every single day. But we can adjust our sails. We can choose how we navigate through the rough waters without capsizing our own boat. True mastery is not controlling the world, but controlling the storm within yourself, ensuring that your inner peace remains totally unshaken. Bobby became a pillar of the community, a man who proved that even the hottest fire can be tamed by wisdom. He looked back at this mountain one last time, thankful for the journey that taught him the art of stepping aside. Remember, when the world shakes you, be the still water. When mud is thrown, simply step aside and keep walking forward. Peace is a choice we make in every moment, a power that no one can take away unless we let them. Thank you for watching this story on Wise Soul Tales. May you find your own calm amidst the storms of life.